time we start. And we'll be recording this, and we'll send the recording out this afternoon, as well as the issue of Jeff Connects, which is our digital county business newsletter. We sent that out earlier this week, and it had all of the candidates' photos and bios and contact information. We'll include that, and so you have a way to contact them. You are all muted for this meeting, and questions have been pre-selected from those who have been submitted in advance, and we've combined some when they were similar, and there were a lot of similar questions. So we thought it was interesting that a lot of people want the same information. Our candidates will start in alphabetical order, and we rotate through that order to determine first to respond to each of the questions, beginning with a 2-minute introduction by each candidate. Our first candidate for questions will be our unopposed candidate for Jefferson County Commissioner of District 1, Kate Dean, and following her will rotate through the 3 candidates for Jefferson County Commissioner District 2, each of them having the opportunity to be first to answer any of the questions. Staff is timing the candidates' responses, and in case you didn't see it before, Ryan, show them what that looks like. Yep, that's that red screen, very low-tech response here, which lets them know their 2 minutes are up. We hope all the candidates will respect that. As we near the end of the hour, each of the candidates will have a 2-minute wrap-up, and again in the next available alphabetical order. We thank you for submitting those questions in advance. There were a lot of them to help us with a fair and open process. And we know you might have some more questions later, and we're not going to be able to address them, but you will have the email addresses for your candidates, and you could email them directly, and I know that they'll be responsive. And now we are ready to roll, and I want to introduce you, if you are unaware, to Jefferson County Commissioner District 1, Kate Dean, for her opening statement. Kate?
Great. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see so many familiar faces here on the call. First, I want to acknowledge the extraordinarily difficult times we're in and know that many of you are likely facing hardships, whether economically or family stress. So I want to thank you for being politically engaged right now when perhaps you want to stay in bed many mornings like I do and eat carbs or watch TV or whatever your vice is. But I would say there's actually never been a more important time to be politically engaged, so thank you. Second, I want to acknowledge how fortunate I feel. I have a job and a secure income right now, thanks to your taxpayer dollars. But also, I'm extremely fortunate to be unopposed in this election. Both of these things motivate me to work even harder right now to help get the county through the crisis. And while I'm glad I don't have to campaign a lot, frees me up to focus on the huge challenges at hand, I also don't take your vote for granted for a minute. So I know I'm supposed to tell you about all the great things that I've accomplished in my first term of office, but that feels a little disingenuous. I will just list a few things that I'm proud of that we've gotten through in the last 3 or 4 years. In my first year, we got all of our public meetings live streamed and video archived, which allows greater access and transparency. I'm glad to have reignited the Port Hadlock Sewer project by getting funding from the state legislature, and now we're seeking federal dollars for that project. I'm pleased that we have reasonable land use regulations so that large-scale commercial shooting facilities will be indoors where those impacts can be mitigated. I'm proud that we've purchased land for the next section of the Olympic Discovery Trail, and construction funds have been applied for. So just a few examples of the things I have been working on all of our behalf. But I could also tell you what you probably already know, which is that work in government can be frustratingly slow, and that I'm really afraid for the future here. Let's see, I'm seeing a red card. How long do I have to finish up?
30 seconds.
Okay, so, we have a lot of work ahead, and I'm happy to dive into that work in the questions that you have provided and as we wrap up, so thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And we have now three questions for you that were submitted. So the first question, which will give you an opportunity to continue, I think, a little bit down some of that path. What do you consider the area of greatest impact that you've had in the county during your tenure thus far as a commissioner?
Okay. Let's see. I could touch on a few areas, but I think probably the most kind of pragmatic really has to do with the Port Hadlock sewer. And I get a lot of questions about this. So I will spend some time focused on that, where I will say that that project, which we know has been controversial for many, many years here, and again, frustratingly slow to make progress on, which is good in some ways. That's given us more time to think about how to scope that project appropriately. But, and I'm going to try and answer a number of questions here, and I know you're going to give me a red card here to tell me to wrap up. But what's important to say is that we live in a county that only has one municipality, which is Port Townsend, and one urban growth area that isn't even actually an urban growth area until we put wastewater treatment there. And that means that we cannot have any sort of density or any increased intensity of development in the county until that is built, which puts all of the pressure into Port Townsend for that development. And we know what the land costs have done here. So when people say, why do we need an urban growth area? I say, we need somewhere to put affordable housing. We need somewhere for businesses to be able to develop that perhaps don't want to be in the city. We need a sustainable tax base for the county, which we currently don't have when everything is driven into city limits. Of course, there is a need for the urban density that a city provides. Of course, that's going to look different in Port Hadlock. But the fact is that until we have services available in the county, we are driving the affordability crisis in Port Townsend. So I am proud that we have made significant effort on that in the last 4 years, and I plan to continue that focus.
Thank you, Kate. Question 2 for Kate. COVID-19 has changed the trajectory for all of us for 2020 and beyond. What are you working on now and in the short term to smooth that path forward?
Sure. So absolutely. I'd say COVID-19 has nearly derailed much of the work that we're trying to do in the county, but not entirely. And I'm very grateful that we've been able to keep staff on to keep projects like the sewer going, even though a lot of our time is diverted to other things. Excuse me. So I'd say the greatest diversion of effort has been towards this intergovernmental effort called the Recovery and Resiliency Planning that your 4 local governments, the county, the city, the port, and the PUD have embarked upon. And that is trying to create a very grassroots effort where we work with volunteers, residents, nonprofits, professionals working in 6 fields, 6 themed subject areas to try to identify both the very short-term needs, how do we get through this crisis with as little collateral personal damage as possible to our community, and then starting to think about how do we look at our economy and our community in a way that doesn't make us so vulnerable to disruptions like this. And that is I think a really, this crisis has brought, sorry, made very clear the kind of cracks in the system. We are lucky to live in a beautiful place that has incredible cultural assets. That's a real pull for tourism. And yet we know that that is not a sustainable economy for us to rely on, so that when a hit like this comes, much of our economy is devastated. So the immediate need will be how to get through the next year or two. But also we're hoping that these task forces that we're creating right now and really encourage your participation in, will be thinking about longer term solutions as well.
And Kate, the last question we have, what is the personal goal or project that you'd most like to bring to fruition in this upcoming term, and how are you planning on making that happen?
Hmm. Let's see. Oh, so many. I mean, I think that the metric that is actually most important to me is, and this is partly having lived through the last recession, 2008 to 2012 approximately, where I had just friend after friend, which represents working families in this community, leave. So many left. We saw the census and the school drop. The morale was just incredibly low. So if I had to say, what is the one thing that kind of gets me up in the morning, it is how to make this place more livable for families. And, you know, that's multifaceted. I think an easy thing to look at, and frankly, I would say a frustration that we have not been able to do well in my term or many previously, is really address housing in a comprehensive way. So I would love to see working families be able to purchase homes here, be able to stay, be able to see wages that will actually support livability. So that is my number one priority.
Thank you, Kate. And now you have 2 minutes to do a wrap-up closing statement.
Great. I do want to talk a little bit more about the next 4 years, because I think they're going to be really rough, and I love this job and really hope to serve another term. And the work ahead is clear. So keeping our communities healthy, number one. And then we need to take care of the most vulnerable people. We know a lot of people are suffering right now, and that will continue. We need to support our local businesses. We need to find a way to house everyone, and we need to build infrastructure like broadband. And just, I'll reiterate that I think there's never been a more important time to be engaged. And these times are asking us to engage in really unprecedented efforts, looking at a pandemic, public health crisis, a civil rights crisis, grappling with economic disaster, and questioning the very underpinnings of our democracy. These are huge. So encourage you to engage in the task forces that we're setting up for this recovery and resiliency planning effort. And of course, please vote, and encourage everyone you know to vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. We know that you have to dash off to another meeting, and we are delighted that we've had the opportunity to have you here. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Now we're going to tee up for opening statements for Jefferson County Commissioner District 2. And we'll start that rotation with Heidi. So Heidi, when you are ready, please give us your opening statement.
Great, thank you, Arlene. Well, first I want to thank you guys for hosting us today. I have learned poignantly that there is very little time for conversation or airing of issues in this race, and it's quite frankly frustrating for me, but I know it's even more frustrating for all the voters out there. So thanks for having us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Heidi Eisenhour, and I'm running to serve you as Jefferson County Commissioner for District 2, where I have deep roots. I attended local schools here. I went to Chimicum from grades 4 to 10, and then Port Townsend schools. And I was raised in a commercial fishing family, so I grew up in the boatyard, and relish all of the decades of living in this community. I've been planning to run for this seat for quite some time, and in a conversation with former Commissioner Richard Voigt the other day, he reminded me I've been planning to run for the seat since I was in my mid-20s, when he appointed me to the Planning Commission that wrote the first comprehensive plan for the county. Since then, I have run small businesses and worked in local nonprofits and regional nonprofits. I've taken on positions of increasing responsibility as Executive Director of Jefferson Land Trust, currently as on the leadership team for the Northwest Maritime Center, and in other regional nonprofit leadership positions. Some of the projects I'm most proud of in the community, though, are the ones that really play to my heartstrings. As a consultant, I worked on the 2012 remodel of the Jefferson County Library after the 2011 bond measure failed. It was my job to recruit the community to support that effort to remodel the library. So I organized events and I did outreach to library patrons and, oh, there's my pink card. So I also helped lay the groundwork for the Chimicum Corner Farm Stand as a business consultant. And I helped develop the inventory that we first carried in the store. And one of my tasks was to find the 2 to 3 items that would pay the rent at the Corner Farm Stand. And I am happy to say that I did that, and the Corner Farm Stand still stands today. I think it was my job to be #1 cheerleader there. So since I announced in April, I've had hundreds and hundreds now of conversations with members of our community. And what I'm hearing from them is they want to elect someone who knows them, knows what they care about, and will work hard as their county commissioner. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work on behalf of you and everyone else in Jefferson County. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heidi. The second opening statement will be from Amanda.
Universal, unmute yourself. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. I always enjoy sitting with fellow business people here in the chamber. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Funaro, and I want to earn your vote to be the next District 2 County Commissioner. I've lived in Jefferson County for the better part of 30 years, and I know from my own personal experience what it takes to earn a living here, let alone what it takes to raise a family on those same working class wages. Listen, it doesn't matter if you're a young person who's just starting out, or a single parent raising a child, or nearing retirement yourself and trying to find the succession planning for your business, or one of our valuable elders who have so much wisdom to impart to our community. There are few things that are more destabilizing than not having safe and secure housing or dependable housing options. That's why once elected, I will continue my work tirelessly to increase our inventory of accessible and affordable housing units for our residents. I'm sure, like many of you, we can agree that this COVID pandemic is going to have longer lasting and deeper economic impacts than any of us could have even imagined. That's why I believe that right now in this moment, I'm best suited to be a leader in our community. My experience and my skill at bridging community divides and bringing people together are going to be necessary for the coalition building that needs to happen in order to unite and work on that large-scale infrastructure development and growth for a more sustainable and resilient future for all of us. When you vote for Amanda Funaro, you're voting for the working families for a working county. I hope I can count on your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lorna, your opening statement is next.
There, sorry, I had trouble getting my cursor over to unmute myself. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Arlene and the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us here this morning. I just want to welcome everybody. It's really nice to be here this morning. I get asked a lot as I am out about and talking to various people throughout the community. Well, there's 3 of you running. What sets you apart from your opponents? And what I reply to that is I'm the candidate that has the strong leadership experience. And right now we need strong leadership on the Board of County Commissioners. I have 25 years of experience as a Snohomish County manager and a community activist. I've dealt with the complex regulations that we're dealing with now. For instance, with the sewer project, we built affordable housing and I helped to remove the roadblocks to getting that done. Removing roadblocks to housing is really one of my top priorities. Home prices have risen 49% in this county in the past 3 years. My husband and I moved to Cape George 9 years ago, but my family has deep ties to Jefferson County. My grandparents were lighthouse keepers here, and much of my life has been rooted in Jefferson County. Early in my career, Eleanor Stopps and I worked side by side in Washington, D.C. to create the Protection Island Wildlife Refuge, which I see out my window. For the past 7 years, I've worked in collaboration and coordination with my fellow Jefferson County committee and commission members solving real problems in our community. There's a reason that we have thousands of acres of protected farm and forest lands in Jefferson County. It's because we did it. There's a reason we have a ban on salmon net pens in Washington state. It's because Representative Mike Chapman and I worked with a coalition in Olympia to get that done. There's a reason we have an indoor-only gun range ordinance in Jefferson County. It's because we got it passed. I'm proud of our businesses, our schools, our nonprofits, and agencies and their response to the current crisis. As commissioner, I intend to build on their high standard of effective collaboration and innovation. By working together and by seizing this moment and the opportunities in it, our collective resiliency, creativity, and spirit of cooperation can bring us all to a brighter future. I'd be grateful for your vote for Lorna Smith for Commissioner on August 4th.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead now and start with a question. And the question starts with a statement. And the first one in this question rotation will be Amanda. I will repeat the question before each of the candidates' response because it can get really confusing if we don't. So the question is, as a commissioner, you are authorized and required to make policy for the county, defining high-level goals and long-range outcomes, budgeting, along with state and regional and local responsibilities and committees. Why do you want this job? Why do you want to be a commissioner? And what will you do to provide yourself with the information you need to make the determinations necessary and not be swayed by the many vocal competing interests that may arise?
Wow, that is a very, very, very big and complex question that I don't know can be answered in 2 minutes, but I will give it my very best. Pardon my chuckle because your seriousness with which and gravity of the role of the job, why would you want it, is what I heard. I'll tell you first and foremost why I want, why I'm working so hard at the prospect of becoming your commissioner. I believe so deeply in this place, our county, everyone who lives here sees it. It's interesting, the many conversations I've been having with residents over the last few weeks and months, I find that we are so much more alike than we are different. And that thread of unity that brings our community together, the shared value of this place, is something that I see intrinsic within everyone. And I feel a deep need to protect that, not just for myself and my family, but for all of us and for our future generations. It's as important to our farmers in the valley as it is to our retirees who are looking to have this be the last home that they live in, to the children in the schools who are trying to imagine what their future might look like in what is increasingly an uncertain time. I'm not an easily swayed person. Anyone who knows me knows that, but I am a fair and even-minded person, I'd like to think. I am deeply interested in research and data collection. I believe in science-based best practices, and I seek those out in everything that I do. And then I weigh those against my own sets of values, my sense of integrity, and the need for the greater good for our community. And I want an opportunity to take my skills and to put all of that forth for the long-range livability of Jefferson County. Thank you.
Thank you. And for Lorna Smith, Lorna, why do you want to be commissioner, and what will you do to provide yourself with the information you need to make the determinations necessary and not be swayed by the many vocal competing interests that may arise?
I've always been a government servant for my entire career, for my entire life. I've always worked for government, and I've always at the same time been a community activist. So this role comes very naturally to me. I'm very prepared for it. And the reason why I want to continue here in Jefferson County serving in county government is I care really deeply and personally about this beautiful place that we all live in and call home. I care about it, and I want to bring my years of experience to the benefit of the county. I know how to do research on issues. That's kind of the underpinnings of being an elected official. You need to know where to get the information. I know who to go to get information. You listen to your department heads. Listen, listen, listen is one of the key, three key words when you're serving in public office. And so, whereas I might not be swayed by outside interests, I'm going to listen to everybody. That's a commitment I'm making, that you know, working with coalitions is a good way to get things done. I know where to go to get answers to questions. I'm an ecologist by education, so I also want to see a lot of our answers to the problems we're facing today, including the COVID-19, based on actual science. I have a background in land use planning. I'm serving on the Jefferson County Planning Commission right now, have for the last 7+ years, as well as the Jefferson County Conservation Futures Committee. I know this community well. I know the regulations that govern this community. I am well set to serve right now, and I look forward to being the next county commissioner.
Thank you. And Heidi, why do you want to be a commissioner? And what will you do to provide yourself with the information you need to make the determinations necessary and not be swayed by the many vocal competing interests that may arise?
Thank you, Arlene. I've thought about being county commissioner seriously for the last six to 8 years. But I think, as I said earlier, the seed for this role has been planted for decades in me. And the reason that I am really inspired to run is that I've seen the power of bringing diverse voices to a table and helping to facilitate a community's kind of intention behind issues. And there's such strong power when we work together that we can achieve things that we never thought were imaginable. I think the way to make sure that you are grounded in the facts is, as everyone else said, to do research. And I too am an environmental scientist and have a science background. I think another part of that's important is budgeting. It has to be fiscally possible. So finding the way to pay for things is part of almost any community dream that we might have. And that's something that I have a lot of experience figuring out in this community and in the region. So those would be kind of the hard tools that I would bring to the table. But I would also say that with competing interests, I'm not opposed to being convinced of another path. And in my professional experience and my personal life, I have been, convinced that another way is the best way to go in the past. And in many instances, that was the best way to go. And I think that openness, communication, research, and bringing the community together in a nexus to bring the best ideas we have to bear are the ways that I would address a path forward for our county.
Thank you. The next question, which starts with Lorna Smith, is COVID-19 has changed the trajectory of our lives and businesses. Budget issues relative to this are large and mounting. How do we handle this from the county perspective and mitigate the damage? And how do we move us forward to embracing a more sustainable future?
Okay, I got to remember that mute button. I actually have experience going through a recession, going through a budget reduction, and what that takes. And as a county commissioner, I would be relying on the various department heads and staff, the county administrator and his staff, to bring forward budget recommendations. The people on the ground who are working on actual day-to-day activities, they know best where there are areas in their budget that can sustain some cuts without, eliminating or permanently damaging programs. I worked with Philip Morley when I worked at Snohomish County. I have a very good relationship with him. And so that very first step in making those budget cuts when necessary is to work with your team. And the team does consist of all those other elected officials and the department heads. It takes everybody working together. The county has also appointed a person particularly to work on seeking outside grant funding, some of the COVID relief dollars. That's going to be an important part of us, filling some of the budget holes as we move forward. Right now, we don't look to be in a terrible position for the rest of this year and next year, but the crystal ball beyond that, and this is in the words of Philip Morley, gets pretty murky. So we have to be prepared that we could see even more substantial cuts coming our way. I want to see county staff stay on board as much as we can so that we're not damaging essential public services. When you have to let go staff and then rehire later, that's, you lose that history, you lose the training. So hopefully we'll be able to avoid the worst of that as we dive deeper into this this COVID pandemic, because we can all see we're not out of it yet. I've made tough budget decisions, and I'm not afraid to go forward and help the county survive this time and come out resilient at the other end. Thank you.
Thank you. And Heidi, the question is now yours. The COVID-19 has changed the trajectory of our lives and businesses. The budget issues relative to this are large and mounting. How do we handle this from the county perspective and mitigate the damage and move us forward to embracing a more sustainable future?
Sorry, I need to write down one word. So I am doing this every day right now at work. I work for the Northwest Maritime Center, and I've been on the leadership team there. And we have, over the last 4 months, gone through a couple of permutations of staffing and made some very, very excruciatingly hard decisions. It's still alive in my body. It's what I'm doing right now. I have experience with frugal budgets from my 30 years of being a nonprofit manager. So, if for those of you who know about nonprofits, you all know that nonprofits are lean machines as it is. And so that experience lends itself to this time as a county elected official in terms of the skills I have as a budget writer and As Lorna said, the team heads for the different departments within the county are responsible for their individual budgets. And it's the commissioner's job to approve a budget and to hear from their staff what their budget proposals are. And I think that's a good way to do it, and the same way we do it at the Maritime Center, where we have 9 distinct lines of business. And so those 8 lines of business each have a budget manager, and those budget managers all work on behalf of their budgets up to the leadership team. And we pass a budget, make hard decisions, and move forward. And it's just what I do every day. So I think that I am well positioned to lead us through the COVID-19 crisis as a county commissioner, because I'm working in that space right now. I also think that our county moved to adopting a 2-year budget in 2019. I see that pink card. And so we have right now a budget for 2020 and 2021. And I thought, oh God, the county's budget's going to be, a wreck. But I've done some digging, and what I've learned is that some of the places where I thought I would see precipitous drop-offs in revenue, like sales tax and property tax, actually sales tax isn't going down as much as I might have thought it was, because we are a place of delivery. We get taxes based on where stuff is delivered to, not where it's bought. So where Kitsap County is suffering more right now, Jefferson County, we're all staying home and shopping here and ordering from Amazon, and those trucks are delivering stuff here. So there are nuances within the budget that I'm learning about every day and asking a lot of questions about. Sales tax isn't as bad as we thought. Property tax, our treasurer has done a great job of keeping that stable. Real estate excise, payment in lieu of taxes, those taxes are coming in on target. So for the next couple of years, we're okay. And yes, give me the crystal ball for after that. But I look forward to doing the work of whatever we find in that crystal ball.
Thank you. And Amanda, the COVID-19 has changed the trajectory of our lives and our businesses. Budget issues relative to this are large and mounting. How do we handle this from the county perspective and mitigate the damage moving forward to embracing a more sustainable future?
Thank you for the question. So let me say, budgets are something that this audience, I'm sure in particular, has a good understanding of. And I think the one thing that both of my opponents have missed in the question is the impact of the budget and how we manage it as a county and where the tax revenue comes from is one piece. The other piece of the budget of our county is how it impacts the small business owners and the businesses that exist here. So I don't want that piece to get lost from the conversation. I think the work that we have to do as commissioners, yes, is to manage the budget that is available to us, but it also is about driving policy. And from my perspective, what I'd like to see is deepening that collaboration. Kate mentioned the recovery and resiliency planning group that's meeting. I'm elated, because that is exactly the kind of vision I have hoped for our county for a very long time. I think that continued work of working in collaboration is going to be necessary for that long-term planning of what our budget's going to look like and how our community is going to stay economically resilient in years to come. I think the COVID pandemic has been a real eye-opener for a lot of us to show us that our economy is only as strong as we make it, and we need to deepen our ability to have local businesses that aren't entirely reliant on physical tourism coming into our county. So, and I have to say, many of you may or may not know, I mean, I was a staff accountant at the Northwest Maritime Center, used to help enter that budget. I run a small business. I know firsthand what it takes to make the numbers balance at the end of every month. And it's been frightening in the last few months. I have a lot of experience with financial management for many of our small businesses and local nonprofits, and think that I'm well suited in this moment. Thank you. I see your red card.
Thank you. And so for Heidi, housing is a deep and complex issue everywhere, but even more so it seems in Jefferson County. How do we move past that chicken or the egg place we seem to be in now and move toward real solutions to this issue?
I see the housing crisis daily in the community. Every time I walk out my door. I received a letter from the Methodist Church here in Hadlock last week asking how we could help the people who are living in their cars 2 blocks down the street from where I live, where could we open county lands to providing people a place to park their cars. I hate it that we're even asking that question, but it seems like things like that are a good idea, and those are the kinds of pivots that we need to consider as commissioners. Is it possible for us to provide support in terms of space, because we have that, for people who need it to park their vehicles? More people are living in their cars right now than have ever in the past. And we're just going into this COVID-19 crisis. So I fear the months and years ahead. In terms of affordable housing for our community, there are a lot of kind of solutions and nonprofits and efforts that are working at addressing this problem. But I feel like they need to be emphasized, and their collaboration needs to be supported in a way that we look outside the community to our state and federal leaders to find a way to bring more resources into our community. There's homeless housing solutions, there's affordable housing solutions, there's alternative affordable housing solutions that I've been hearing about from some of my friends. And I think we need to support those. I think we need to develop permitting regulations and more flexible policy that allows for small, tiny house communities, more dense apartment buildings. There are a lot of solutions that have worked in other communities, even neighboring counties to ours. And I think that it's incumbent upon us in this time to be even more creative than we ever have. And I think at the county level, we can do that with policies around home building and the permit process. Thank you. Sorry, I see the pink card.
Thank you. Amanda, housing is a deep and complex issue everywhere, but even more so here in Jefferson County. How do we move past that chicken and egg place we seem to be in now and work towards some real solutions?
So housing is critical to the growth and long-range livability of our community. It's been on the table for 20 years, and we have done very little to actually increase our units or number of housing units in the county. So when we had the collective impact group back in 2011, it was identified as one of 3 key areas: housing, education, jobs. And education, we found ways to address, but we still never addressed the issue. I'm sorry, jobs and education we addressed, but housing, we just haven't quite gotten there. A lot of it relates to the permitting department, and the county's doing really good work right now. I've been having conversations with Linda Perales, who stepped in to take over for Patty while Patty's working on our budgeting. And I've been proposing some ideas for ways that we can potentially help through partnership with the Home Builders Association, potentially the Realtors Association, and other stakeholders to look at how we may help facilitate the county in doing some front-end work on easing that permit process for the end user. I've also been deeply engaged with the on-site sewage codes and looking at how those can be revised to allow for the tiny homes that Ms. Eisenhour speaks of. One of the big barriers to tiny housing is the waste. And so our county doesn't currently have a septic code that allows for permitted holding tanks, which is a barrier to being able to have a small movable home. So, but I think it's a great idea when it comes to a means of transitional housing, or not having, an 80-year-old woman sleeping in her car and not feeling safe. I had a long conversation with Scott Rosecrans last week and saw the amazing work they're doing. It's going to take all of us. There is no one size fits all, but I am confident that we can make some headway, and I won't sleep until we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorna, the housing question is a deep and complex issue everywhere, but even more so here in Jefferson County. How do we move past the chicken or the egg place we seem to be in now and work towards some real solutions?
Thank you, Arlene. When I worked in Jefferson County, I successfully served on teams that worked on, successfully saw built on the ground affordable housing projects that were associated with transportation hubs and a mix of retail and low-income housing. It's a good approach. Of course, that was a larger county, but we can scale down those kind of issues. I've been, again, in addition to my work at Snohomish County, doing planning and facilitation of those kinds of projects. On the Jefferson County Planning Commission, we updated the comprehensive plan, which we passed on to the Board of County Commissioners, and that plan contains a lot of policy directive to make affordable housing more real in this county. To look at pilot projects that might include tiny homes that aren't hooked up to the septic systems as a kind of a pilot project. Can we do that? And other kinds of incentives for affordable housing. So this issue is so complex that it also gets into the housing for the homeless and transitional housing. And I've been talking to Bayside Housing folks a lot about their plans. They actually have a conceptual design for a tiny house village that they got some partial funding. They've got some backers to do this, but what's missing is a location for it. So I intend to work with groups like Bayside Housing, like the Jefferson Community Foundation, like Habitat for Humanity, their whole program of sweat equity so that you can get into a house for a much lower price. We have to pursue these kinds of things. Certainly the county has a lot of resources, land resources, where we could locate these kind of projects. Affordable housing is one of my top priorities, and I'm determined we will begin to chip away at getting those solutions on the ground. We've been talking about it too long. The problem's not going to go away. I think we can predict that with COVID-19 and more job layoffs, it's going to get worse. We have to address this problem, and I want to be right there front and center, helping to see that we do just that.
Thank you. Amanda, the next question will be going to you first, and it's about transportation. Transportation for many in our county is challenging and affects economic development, workforce, family life, education, recreation, tourism, virtually every aspect of our lives. What can we do to increase our options and opportunities?
Thank you for the question, Arlene. Boy, that's a big question. I like how you put them all together. There are a couple components to transportation within our community. And the biggest, I think, falls within with our public transit. I was talking with one of the former commissioners, asking them about their experience working with the transit and trying to identify where the big challenges are. One of those beautiful moments where you realize that the work I've been doing for the last 3 years, in an odd sort of way, I absolutely got the problem. So I run Good Man Sanitation. We provide septic pumping that many of you know, but we also provide portable restrooms across the whole entire North Olympic Peninsula. And it's a logistics juggernaut. I have routes that have to be run every day. We run at least 15 separate routes in any given week. And if one piece of that comes apart, or as soon as there's a new piece added in, we have to reassess the whole pie. And there are some real practical approaches to transportation logistics that say I can't send a vehicle out to the same location 3 times in a given week, and at a certain point it becomes non-cost effective. I've heard people suggest that in order to increase our transit options for Holstein and Brennan in particular, that maybe we just get small vans and run them several times a day. But it also comes down to staffing. And any employer understands that when you're paying, I can pay a guy to drive out to Brennan once in a day, or I can pay him to go there 5 times in a week, or I can pay him to go there once and do multiple things in this given day. And depending on how you look at that, it decreases the cost overall. So I think there's some real challenges given the geographic size of our county. But I'm willing to put my head around it. And I know that there are minds that have been looking at this for a long time. So I'm interested in what that might look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorna, the transportation question is yours next. What can we do to increase our options and opportunities in Jefferson County?
Thank you, Arlene. When I worked in Snohomish County, I worked for the transportation department for many years, actually doing transportation planning. And we were kind of on the foreguard, if you will, for planning for climate change and addressing that issue. We looked very seriously how to get people out of their single occupancy vehicle cars. Now that in a county like Jefferson is a real challenge. I know that our buses are running half full, a third full, and less. And they're certainly not able to pay for themselves by any kind of a rate. But I look forward to working with Jefferson Transit to see what kind of other vehicles maybe the fleet could accommodate that would be smaller, more economical, perhaps electric, start swapping over to electric vehicles for their fleet, as I know the city of Port Townsend has been doing that as they can. To meet our climate change goals of reducing carbon in the air, we're simply going to need to do that. We're going to have to move away from these vehicles that are burning fossil fuels. So that's a big part of planning for transportation. Also incorporating walking friendly communities so that people are able to have sidewalks or safe walking spaces to go from their homes to their nearby stores. These are important. We're missing a lot of sidewalks in the county, and yes, that kind of infrastructure costs money, I realize, but there's also opportunities sometimes for simply painting a shoulder that, in designating that as a safe walking area. Bike lanes, we need to, make biking more safe and facilitate that as a mode of transportation. So we really need to, in Jefferson County, come into, the 21st century in transportation planning and move away from our gas guzzling single occupancy vehicles to the extent that we are able. And that's going to mean revamping our transit system and bus routes and the kind of vehicles we use. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi, that transportation question now falls to you. What can we do to increase our options and opportunities in Jefferson County?
So I'm not sure we need to increase our options, just getting right at the question that you asked. But I do agree with the opportunities piece. One thing is that I'm excited about is that the county, Jefferson County, set goals to move its fleet to more alternative and electrical vehicles over a period of time. And they're little by little doing that. And I feel like that's one area where county commissioners can have a say or a role in making sure that that happens by making that a policy priority going forward. So that's something that I would support wholeheartedly. But I want to talk a little bit about my personal experience with transit. And in an earlier forum, I said it's frustrating when you get on the bus and there are only 2 or 3 other people on it. So for a number of years, I was living here and working on the other side of the Sound. And I made a commitment to get there on transit. So I would get on Jefferson Transit and transfer to Kids. I'd walk to the bus stop, get on Jefferson, transfer to Kitsap, get on the ferry, get on Metro, and then walk to my office in Fremont in Seattle. And it took about 5 to 6 extra hours of my day, but I got a lot of work done in that time, and my employer was flexible and I could work on the bus and the ferry. That said, I was always frustrated by the number of people not on Jefferson Transit, because then you get to Kitsap and the bus would be full, and obviously in Seattle the bus would be full. One thing I think we can do is incentivize bus ridership. I've seen that work in other communities, and I've seen employers provide bus passes. I think if we can figure out how to get grant support for our community transit to allow employers and service agencies to provide low and reduced bus passes for people in our community, I think we'd see more people on our buses. And I've had that conversation with I see the pink card, a number of the fellow riders on the bus, and that's a very practical solution that's worked in other communities, and we could do it here. So sorry to be focused on one thing, but that's what I want to focus on.
So I think we have time for at least 1 or 2 more questions. Lorna, this one's going to you, and it was probably the most asked question that was submitted. And it's Jefferson County has been said to be lacking in diversity. How do you believe we should move forward with curing this deficiency, or should we? Is this a lack of engagement more than a lack of occupancy? How do we engage the existing multi-generational and demographic audiences that are here now in the community? Big question.
Sorry, got to unmute. That's a very personal question for me, Arlene. My family itself is very diverse, and I embrace diversity across the spectrum, from talking about people of different ethnic backgrounds, our LGBTQ community. I think in general, I give Jefferson County fairly high points for being welcoming, but I'm not sure that that message is out there in the larger community. I think for people of color to move here to Jefferson County, it feels, it feels very different to them. When you walk down the street and you're the only one that looks a certain way, it's kind of an isolating feeling, and I understand that. When I worked for government before, one of the things I made a real emphasis to do was to go out to job fairs in the central city area, for instance, and try to recruit more people of color, people of diversity into the workforce, let them know that they would be welcome to apply for these jobs and encourage them to do so. And at times even actually helping them, find the application, and this is how you access it and fill it out, etc. So we need to look at what steps do we really need to take to make this a community that works for all folks. And one thing we don't have much of here is accommodations for, handicapped access to our buildings, street crossing, is things as simple as this. We really need to do a community assessment. I guess that's what I'm saying, and figure out what are the roadblocks to diverse community development here. What's keeping people from moving into Jefferson County? And, you know, find ways to make people feel more welcome, maybe doing festivals around certain cultures. But certainly starting with the workforce at the county, which is an area that we can have some control over, and doing that outreach for job openings that I talked about. Seeing that we have diverse representation on our various advisory committees. You know, let's start with the Planning Commission, for instance. So those would be some of my thoughts for addressing that issue. I volunteer with the JACIRA group, the Advocates for Immigrant Rights, and my family is sponsoring a Nicaraguan asylum-seeking refugee. So I care very deeply about this issue, and I intend to make it a priority when elected.
Thank you. Heidi, that question, how do you believe we should move forward with curing the stated lack of diversity in Jefferson County, or should we? And is it more a lack of engagement than occupancy? How do we engage the existing multi-generational and demographic audiences that are here now in the community?
That's a great question. And I feel like it gets back to a lot of the things we've been talking about all morning. It's affordable housing, it's access to broadband, it's food security. People can't move here because they can't afford to move here. And we can't be frustrated by the makeup of our community based on what impediments are in place in our community. We need to work on breaking down those impediments. So it's my strong belief that we need to work double time on affordable housing. We need to work double time on broadband. It's a huge issue in our community. Everyone needs access to the internet. More people are working online now than ever before. And we've proven that it works. I mean, my colleagues at the Maritime Center and I, more than half of us aren't on campus every day. We're working from home and it's working. We're still collaborating. We're still being innovators. We're still leading the way on a lot of efforts. And I think it's something that we need to support. And so I think broadband's an important levels the playing field on a lot of issues. I think food security is another important one. But the other thing I think is critical is that we need to break down the ways we think we need to communicate with people. We have all these forums, we're having these online forums. Why is it the same mix of 40 people on this forum? How do people find out about these forums? How do we get the information out there? We need to be more creative and look at our young people for how they're communicating. I have some of my young supporters telling me I need TikTok videos for my campaign, and we're working on our first one. But we need to start talking to people in the ways that they're ready to be spoken to, and we need to listen a lot because we don't know the best way to do everything. It's the people who we're saying we need in our community who know the best way to be invited. And I'm putting up my own pink card if it hasn't gone up.
Thank you. And Amanda, we're going to let you wrap up this question. Jefferson County, it has been said, lacks in diversity. How do you believe we should move forward with curing this deficiency, or should we? Is this more lack of engagement than occupancy? How do we engage the existing multi-generational and demographic audiences here now in the community?
So I'm an Oklahoma Choctaw woman who's lived in this community for almost 30 years. I have sat in meetings where I have heard over and over again that what we need to do is we need to go to the tribe and ask them for help with X, Y, Z. I don't represent the Jamestown tribe, but as a Native person, I have been in environments where very often the approach is, how do we go ask the tribe what they can do for us? I think that there needs to be some really hard conversations in our community, and they're going to take some vulnerability and some willingness for all of us to sit in that discomfort. It's discomforting for me when I hear that in a room. I'll just be honest, because I have watched Indigenous people within my own family constructs be subjugated to racism regularly. I think it's a really important time to listen, but who are we listening to? I think Ms. Eisenhour makes a very good point about who's sitting at the table. I've recently been in contact with the head of our local Black Lives Matter organization, as well as been contacted by some young LGBTQ plus folks in the community. And early on, I worked with my friend Amelia D'Souza to help establish the Human Rights Alliance for the North Sound. And I think that one of the very first things our county, our city, our police force, our sheriff's department, we can hold them to a sense of accountability by adopting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think that is a very key place we can start. And from there, we can drive policy that creates equity for people in our community, so that when we're talking about issues of poverty and access is what we're really talking about, to housing, to broadband, to all of those things. Those are questions of equity. We're having that conversation in a way that is inclusive of everyone. Again, it's why I think it's important that I be at the table right now, because I'm a great bridger of those divides. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and look at putting out our closing statements. We are going to start with Heidi, then to Amanda, and then to Lorna. So Heidi, please feel free to begin when ready.
Thank you, Arlene. Am I unmuted? Oh, good. I'm unmuted. Thank you, Arlene, and thank you everyone for being here today. I really appreciate seeing all the friends and neighbors in the Zoom, the Brady Bunch. Today's Brady Bunch. I hope that you will support me for County Commissioner, because I think I've just demonstrated I have the right set of tools in my toolbox, including leadership for thriving nonprofits, decades of business management, and the resourcefulness and community connections to help us thrive in the future. I've proven to be dependable and hardworking, and I have a large network of people of all stripes who live in and care about Jefferson County. In the words of a prominent farmer in District 2, Heidi just knows us. Currently, as the Northwest Maritime Center is navigating the COVID-19 crisis, I'm growing new skills every day. I have a front row seat on the impacts of this crisis, and I'm deeply concerned about the growing number of my neighbors who are finding themselves unemployed. Our economy is so fragile right now. The historic unemployment rate in Jefferson County was 4 to 6%, but now we're up to 16%. The COVID crisis has clearly illustrated the need for a web of community resources working together. I am a great bridger of community, and I think that that's one of the strongest reasons to support me for County Commissioner. I would look forward to talking to any of you. My website, HeidiForCommissioner.com, has my phone number on it, and I hope you will join me and 300 of my neighbors who've endorsed this run for County Commissioner. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi. Amanda?
Thank you all for taking critical time out of your day to be here with us. I always appreciate any moment where I get to sit in community. I have been here doing this work for our community for all the time that I have been a working adult person in Jefferson County. I helped create our Young Professionals Network when there was that moment of crisis that Kate spoke to earlier, when we looked around and none of our peers were here because they couldn't afford to be here. I worked on our collective impact group when I saw that there was a need, a continued need, for how to engage our young professionals and engage our elders and how to build community through housing and promoting quality school programs. I have continued to show up, to volunteer. I helped raise $280,000 through the Northwest Maritime Place-Based Education Program for Port Townsend School District. I am currently sitting on the Joint Oversight Board for our Homeless and Affordable Housing Task Force. And I don't say all of this because I need a pat on the back. I say all of this because I've been doing this work in our community that is necessary, that we've been talking about today, while holding down full-time jobs, sometimes juggling 2 and 3 part-time jobs, and being a mother. I would love to be able to do this work for our community in a full-time capacity. That's why I'm running for office. I want to be able to give my full attention to it. I'm currently endorsed by the Native American Caucus of Washington State Democrats, our North Olympic County Farm Bureau, former Commissioner Kathleen Clare and John Austin, a myriad of community leaders. But you know what? Endorsements aren't votes. Your vote is what counts. And I ask you to please take a chance on voting your conscience and vote for me, because if you want to see working families in our community for years to come, that's what that is. My website is amanda4countycommissioner.com. Please go there and engage. I'd love to speak with you more.
Thank you. Lorna, the floor is yours for your closing statement.
Unmute myself again. Thanks, Arlene, and everybody for tuning in today and hearing us all speak. I really appreciate it. I am the candidate running for county commissioner that has the years of experience leading in county government. I'm ready to lead right now. As we've seen, there are enormous challenges that lie ahead for our economy, for our community. Meeting and rising above these challenges isn't going to be easy. It's going to require the effort of our entire community. We need to work together in collaboration. I believe in us, and I believe in the power of community. I believe in the future of our fantastic, unique county, and it is unique. As your county commissioner, you can count on me to bring my experience to lead you with vision, integrity, and grit, and to work collaboratively with our wise elders, young families, and youth leaders now stepping up to show us a new direction. And I'm proud that they're doing that. If we all work together and listen to each other, we can forge a shining future for Jefferson County. I've been endorsed by the National Women's Political Caucus, by the Sierra Club, by the Washington Conservation Voters, by our current representative, Mike Chapman, the Tarboo Ridge Alliance, and 350 of my fellow Jefferson County citizens. I invite you to join us. The August 4th primary is coming soon. I'd be honored if you would vote for Lorna Smith for commissioner, and our website is lornaforcommissioner.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to thank all of our candidates for joining us today and for all that you do for our community and for having the courage to invest the time and commitment necessary to try to take on this responsibility. Thanks to all of you who joined us today to learn more. We appreciate that and hope that you have your questions answered. And if not, we are going to send out that information so that you can contact the candidates directly. Thank you to Team Chamber, to Ryan Tippett and Ashlyn Brown for your help. And a brief note on August 5th, our Women Doing Business brunch that was set for March is been rescheduled to be a virtual brunch with invitations coming out soon with an absolutely fabulous motivational speaker. And our special guest to kick off this chamber program will be Congressman Derek Kilmer. So we are excited to have him, particularly August 5th, the day after elections. So thank you all again for joining us. Enjoy your weekend. Please shop local and support Jefferson County businesses. And most of all, remember, every vote counts. Vote. Bye, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.